Are you ready?
Let's go.
Now circling in the neutral zone.
Here's the pitch on the way. 36 yards for the win.
This.
Here comes a big chance. The shot.
Is
this the dagger?
The neutral zone.
Home run. Good.
This is as good as it gets.
Now, here's your host, two-time Paralympian, Brock Richardson.
What's going on? It's time for another edition of The Neutral Zone. I am indeed your host, Brock Richardson. Coming up on today's program, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Humboldt Broncos hockey player and bus crash survivor, Ryan Straschnitzki. He talks about his journey in parasports and his 6-part documentary called We Were Broncos, available on AMI TV and AMI Plus. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the NHL Stanley Cup final and maybe a little bit about the NBA final, depending on how long I decide to run my mouth. On that note, here comes your headlines.
Neutral Zone headlines.
Congratulations to Canada's women's goalball team for recently winning a bronze medal at an international event. That is definitely the way that you want to start off the year after these summer games. So congratulations to them, and looking forward to see how that team progresses into this next 4-year cycle.
We would also like to congratulate Team Canada para ice hockey player James Dunn for reaching 100 games played for Team Canada on the international stage. Teammate Adam Dixon is also surpassing the most games played with over 252 games. So we congratulate both of those accomplishments, and we will be speaking with Adam later on in June, which I'm really looking forward to as well.
In an emotional video shared on NHL.com, Meredith Gaudreau, the wife of the late Columbus Blue Jacket Johnny Gaudreau, presented Sean Monahan with the 2024-2025 Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy. This award is given annually to a player who best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. Congratulations, Sean, on a well-deserved award.
Those are your headlines for this week. You want to get a hold of us on social? Here's how you can do that.
And welcome back to the Neutral Zone broadcast booth.
Play ball.
We're set to get this ball game underway. The first pitch is brought to you by Brock Richardson's X account at Neutral Zone BR.
Strike.
Pitch and a strike. Hey gang, why not strike up a chat with Claire Buchanan from the Neutral Zone? Find her on X at Neutral Zone CB. There's a swing of the chopper out to second base, right at Claire as she picks up the ball, throws it over to the first base for a routine play.
Out.
And fans, there's nothing routine about connecting with Cam and Josh from the Neutral Zone at Neutral Zone Cam J and at J Watson 200. Now that's a winning combination.
I am so privileged to be joined by Ryan Straschnitzki, who is one of the survivors of the Humboldt Broncos bus crash. He joins us today to talk about his new 6-part documentary called We Were Broncos, and that can be found on AMI TV at 9 p.m. Eastern on Mondays. If you missed a few of the episodes, you can catch it on AMI Plus. Ryan, thank you so much for doing this interview. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's take you back to the tragic day of April 6th, 2018, when the bus crash happened. When was the first time you were able to speak and connect with your fellow teammates who also survived the crash?
It would have been probably a few days after I had spinal cord surgery. I got moved out of emergency into a room with 4 or 5 of my other teammates. That's when we kind of connected, but it was a weird sort of feeling as though we were all speechless. We didn't really talk much, right? We were just kind of quiet because we couldn't wrap our head around what has happened.
Yeah, it would be a pretty wild experience that nobody would have expected, obviously. So yeah. I can imagine that would be something. There's no doubt that teams in this situation, and sports teams in general, can have a close relationship as they go through seasons Would you say that this tragedy has brought the survivors and yourself closer? Can you describe that relationship now today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going into junior hockey, or anywhere from 16 to 20 years old, and we were kind of kids at the time, really. And so when this happened, it kind of brought us even closer, because it's something that we were brothers that year. We spend all our time together and got really close and connected. And even to this day, as we're approaching 30 years old, right, guys are getting married, having families, so we see each other at least once a year, and it's always good to see them. They're kind of brothers for life, and that bond will never get broken.
They say friends for life, and as being a Paralympian myself, I mean, a lot of my friends and teammates were all moved on and done things, but there is that moment where you're like, yeah, I got to go back and see what they're doing as well. And with such an event that you guys went through and survived, I can only imagine that because of that, you're a bit closer. Exactly. Obviously, right after such a significant event like the bus crash, you're not obviously immediately thinking about parasports and what's next. You're thinking, what's next for me and my life moving forward. When did parasports become actually legitimately on your radar?
So this was, roughly after the accident, probably within a few weeks. I remember asking my dad, sport had been such a huge part of my life, and I was more determined than ever, to get back onto the ice. And so I knew sled hockey wasn't an option. Stand-up hockey wasn't an option. So I thought to myself, well, how am I going to get there? How am I going to get to the top level to prove that I can do it? So 4 months after the accident, I got into the ice for the first time with friends and family in a sled. And the rest is history. I started training my butt off, started making my way to the national program. And then eventually I got cut from the national program and switched my energy over to wheelchair basketball.
Yeah, we'll talk about the ins and outs of the first episode. Full disclosure for those of you listening, I have only seen one episode. There's another one sitting on my PVR as we do this, but I've only seen one episode and previewed some of the other ones as it's gone through. But let's talk about the 6-part documentary called We Were Broncos. Can you tell me about how that actually started to come to be and how the ball got rolling in that regard?
Yeah, so I had Prairie Cat Productions out of Regina reach out. He messaged me over Instagram, and I needed some time to think about it. I wasn't sure what they were going to film or what this would entail or how big it could be, but we got in touch, and I figured, why not give it a shot? So we did a pilot. We sent that out to certain networks, and AMI picked it up, so we're very grateful for that. And kind of the rest is history, right? We signed a 6-episode deal. And I've heard good things, and I'm hoping that we get approved for a few more seasons of filming my wheelchair basketball career.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, because I have a feeling it's going to end sort of on a cliffhanger of where we're at now. We know what the ultimate goal is for you to get to the next summer games, but that's still a ways out. So I would be one that would want to see a renewal of the season. And like I said earlier, I've only seen one episode to date. Can you talk a little bit about okay, so we have six episodes, and they're a certain length of time, but people look at that and say, I wonder how long it took to film everything. So can you kind of shed some light on, yes, we see a 6-part documentary that has its time, but how long does all that take to film and put together?
Oh yeah, I mean, you're filming from September to April. Every month, or you're seeing them once or twice a month, and it is consistently, days of just filming, following you around, doing things, setting up things, right? It's a lot of work, but I'm glad that they came out with 6 episodes out of the hours and hours of filming and travel.
Was there a moment sort of where you forgot yourself and was like, oh yeah, I'm being filmed right at this moment? Like, is there that kind of, I'm just going on about my business during the recording?
Especially during games, right? You're not really focused on the cameras. You're focused on the game and playing and trying to win. And then the kind of cameras will pop up and spook you a little bit. But I was excited the whole time, and I didn't really pay attention when I was doing things.
Love it. Can we talk a little bit about with filming such long time and over periods of time, was there any challenging parts that you can think of while filming the documentary?
Yeah, I think there were certain things where it brought back a lot of memories, right? I went out to Humboldt with a fellow survivor, Tyler Smith, and, it was pretty emotional. one of those things. It's not easy always going back there, but you're very grateful for the memories that you made. And for the most part, it was just long days, right? I mean, the energy kind of depletes quickly when you're trying to do exercises and then go out to shoot a scene or something like that. So it was a lot of work, but I'm glad with the results so far.
Was there any part of the documentary that you thought, man, I really enjoyed that, and I'm glad that they tried to capture that moment?
I'm glad that they got into the world of sled hockey a little bit and showcasing that there is no classification system in sled hockey, and hopefully it gives people who are watching the knowledge that if they perhaps have a similar disability to me, or they can't play sled hockey and they want to play at the top level, that maybe that isn't the sport for them. So I'm hoping that it helps them out a little bit in some capacity, but I'm really happy with the way they shot everything.
Yeah, and it leads nicely into my next question. In that first episode, as you mentioned, it does a lot of focus on your para ice hockey journey. There's some conversations with a couple of people, including Russ Harrington, which is the head coach currently. And one of the things that catches my mind, my eye and ear in all this, is that you said you kind of felt strung along a little bit by Hockey Canada, and your parents also echoed that. Can you sort of talk to me a little bit about that and sort of what you would have hoped or rather seen a little bit different? Because I can't imagine feeling even a little bit strung along. Must have felt not so great.
Yeah, exactly. Like right after I mentioned I wanted to try sled hockey and try to make Team Canada, but then, all of a sudden the media caught a hold of that. I had sponsors right away. They were promoting sled hockey and me getting to the top level, and I had so many supporters. So I felt there was quite a bit of pressure, right? And I didn't want to let anyone down. I didn't want to let my sponsors down. I didn't want to let teammates and friends down. And so I continued pursuing harder and harder at it, and thinking that I can defy the odds. But eventually it reached a point where I couldn't do it, and it was a hard transition because I felt like I'd let a lot of people down.
And there's no secret that para ice hockey is dominated by individuals who have lower body disabilities, amputees, and things of that nature. And there's no classification because of that. Do you see a world where you would think that para ice hockey should have a classification system? Because, as again mentioned in the episode, it's kind of one of the only sports that doesn't have some sort of classification system.
Yeah, I think it could be implemented, but I don't think the other divisions would get as much traction as the top division. I think it would water down the skill level maybe a little bit, but I think there is opportunity to find ways to make the sport more inclusive, or at least find positions for certain individuals with certain disabilities, right? And it's one of those things where maybe it doesn't ever do that. It doesn't have a classification system for life, and maybe it just is how it is, right? And I'm hoping through the episode that people can get some sort of knowledge and understanding from it, and either pursue it or try something else.
And there's also no secret that your goal is to go to the next Paralympic Games in wheelchair basketball. Can you talk a little bit about your journey with wheelchair basketball thus far and what you really enjoyed about it? And yes, I'm going to jump on and do this particular sport.
Yeah, I got hooked as soon as I got recommended to try it out anyways, because there is an equal playing field. There's a classification system, and I'd have a better chance of playing and performing at wheelchair basketball than I did with sled hockey. So I knew that in order to get to the top level, I was going to have to start putting in the work both on and off the court. And so that's what I did. I continued striving and learning and growing. And it took a couple bumps in the road and obstacles, but I learned by making mistakes and kind of getting worked out there by Nick Gonstein and Chad Jasmine. So some amazing players, and I'm grateful that I get to train with them to hopefully make the top level.
There's no denying that you've been through a lot over the last 7 years. What can you look back on your life and say that you have really appreciated through this 7-year journey that otherwise maybe you wouldn't have been able to appreciate without this 7-year journey that you're currently on?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I'm grateful for is my friends, family, and supporters. I mean, they've been there through thick and thin since the beginning, and it's what keeps us, like me and my teammates, motivated every day to continue to live our best lives and live in honor of those that didn't make it. So we're very grateful for the support from everyone, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
when we look at this 6-part documentary, which is a couple of parts in right now, what would be the one sort of big takeaway that you want the audience at the end of it to look back on?
I want them to know that their support helps, but also to hopefully get some inspiration and motivation to continue to strive for their goals. And if they make their goals or do not, that there's always opportunity out there. You just have to put your mind to it and continue to strive. So there, when one door closes, another one opens. And I hope that people, when pursuing goals in life, they realize that if they don't reach their goal, it's not the end of the world, that there's always opportunity elsewhere.
Love it. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this. We greatly appreciate it, and best of luck on the rest of your journey. And I hope to see you in a Canadian uniform in LA for wheelchair basketball, and thus we're going to have to get you back on the program to talk about that. But I will be following your journey as I have from afar, and it's been so great to spend some time with you here today.
Right on. Thank you so much for having me.
That was Ryan Straschnitzki, who was talking to us about the documentary We Were Broncos, which again you can catch on Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern. If you've missed any episodes, you can go back to AMI Plus. They've got it all streamed there. We thank Ryan for his time today, and we'll be following his journey from afar, as I just mentioned. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of today's program, I just want to let people know that there will be no program on Tuesday, June 17th, 2024, because I will be away at Bocce Blast, and I will be along with our very own technical producer, Mark Aflalo. So we are going to give ourselves a week off from what is a challenging week that we're going to do, but we're both looking forward to it. We have not been around each other in quite some time, and so it will be fun to be around Mark for 4 days, and you can catch the event on the YouTube Bocce Blast page. Just put in Bocce Blast, which is spelled BOCCIA BLAST in the YouTube search, and you should be able to find it. So look forward to that.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Brock, but Mark has a little nickname for you, does he not?
Yes, he does. He has a nickname for me, but there's been a development. So I will tell you that I have worked with Mark since 2018, and we've done various blind hockey events over the course of time. And Mark brings everything that he needs for an event where the talent, as we are referred to, doesn't really need to worry about anything. And so I've done 3 or 4 blind hockey championships with Mark, and every year he brings these headphones that are like split at the top, which for somebody with dexterity is not easy because they like fold into each other, and it's just not easy when they fall off, and then I got to put them back on again. So I texted Mark and I said, prior to doing Bocce Blast, I said, do I need to bring my own headphones, or do you need or will you have one that suits me? And he responded back, no, Princess Brock, I don't have a pair of headphones at that time that will work for you, and so you're gonna have to bring your own. So he referred to me as a princess because I needed to bring my own headphone. Having said that, he texted me just like 24 hours ago and said, I actually found one that would work. And I told him, well, you can no longer call me Princess Brock because now you found one that worked. So he told me that I had to explain the story on an upcoming episode of the podcast. So there you go, Mark. I told everybody how much of a princess talent I am just for you.
Every show has a diva, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It may as well be the host.
Sure.
Fair.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I'm
Glad it's not
okay.
me.
I'm okay with being the show's diva. No problem. Let's chat a little bit about the interview with Ryan that I did. But let's pull on a few of the little notes that he gave. And the first one here for you guys is, what are your thoughts on the interview in particularly the idea of being strung along by Hockey Canada. And his parents said it in episode 1. He said it. What do you guys make of that? Let's start with Claire on this one.
It's interesting to hear that perspective and that experience. I personally have had that feeling in a sport of, okay, you actually going to truly see me as an option for the national team or not? And if not, let me know, be honest, and so that I can kind of put my focus elsewhere. And he clearly has a goal of making it to the Paralympic Games. He's being very honest about his goal of wanting to be there in LA with wheelchair basketball. But yeah, it's an interesting take between athletes and coaches of, are you truly seeing my value, and what those conversations were. I'd be really interested to hear more about the experience he had and what he was truly hearing from coaches and why he felt strung along. I know it's been years now since the injury, but it to me, the interview and his story essentially raises kind of two unique thoughts for me. Is like the transition from being a high performance able-bodied athlete and then going into parasports and really seeing the dynamic of that. But also the conversation around disability in itself. It's parasports is unique in that there's some sports that truly fit really well and much better suited towards your disability specifically than other sports. And that's how I see his journey is he's not only trying to be a high performance athlete, but really trying to see where his actual disability fits best.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. When I listened to the interview, and to be honest, I don't know Ryan's parasport journey very well. I've unfortunately missed the first couple of episodes, so I'm going to go back and watch those when I have some time. But to me, I'm a little troubled by the remarks, only because you're talking about a national team. Like, if we equate this to his stand-up hockey career, like, you don't just walk into the World Junior Championship team and make that team automatically. So I'm a bit confused as to why he might think that he would, so soon after injury, walk into the national para team and automatically make it. Now, maybe I've missed something along the way, but it doesn't seem to me like that's something you should really expect. I certainly would not expect that if I was trying out for the team. How they've kept him coming back, maybe they made him promises that they didn't keep, that I don't know, because I haven't seen the episode, unfortunately. But I'm troubled because, on the one hand, if I'm the coaching staff, I look at it and I say, here's this guy who's come out to try out for the team, and that's wonderful. But he's very high profile. Everybody knows his name in Canada because of the crash. And so how are we going to look if we don't give him the chance? And so they gave him the chance, and presumably more than one chance. And so then to say, well, I got strung along. Well, yeah, but what were they supposed to do? They can't just take you and all of your supporters and sponsors and say, oh, no, sorry, you're not good enough, you're done. That wouldn't be a good look either. So I don't know how that ends positively.
Yeah, I think I will, because I have watched all of the episodes. For one, in the first episode, it was very noted, like, hockey was the focus of said episode. It was, let's go back to the hockey journey. They spent a little bit of time on the crash, but when I say a little bit of time, I mean like very little. The focus was more on his parasport journey, as it should be, because as you said, Josh, like, we can't, this is before we recorded, we can't consistently be talking about the crash and the tragedy that exists with that. We have to move on from it, and tell the positive story.
Yes.
I feel that the way it was perceived in the first episode was that there was so much media attention to Ryan and his story, and like media outlets that have no idea about the level of skill on the para ice hockey team and also the level of disability. But I put the level of skill there first on purpose. That I think the media and everybody around him sort of fed him unintentionally these facts that existed that were like, oh, because you were a Humboldt Bronco player and because you were a high profile, you're going to just slide into this because it's in your genes, which some of it would be, I would agree with, but also you're taking away from the people that are already existing in the program. So I do think part of it, Claire, was due to the fact that what the media did, which some of the media doesn't really understand parasports, as we know. Newsflash.
Yeah, not a newsflash. That's probably, other than talking about my story when I personally do interviews, is really doing a lot of correction with what they actually produce as well. There is a lot of lack of research in the parasport world, and so when the media gets a hold of a story like that, it's very easy to create this narrative of, oh, he's this great of an athlete playing for the Broncos.
We may have lost Claire, but she's had some freezing go on. But yes, I do sort of take her point, Josh, in that it's the narrative being fed. And because of that, I don't necessarily fault Ryan for doing that, because Ryan didn't know much about parasports prior to. In one of the episodes, he said, I didn't even think about, sidewalks being shoveled. I didn't think about accessibility. And then to be thrown in, you're going to trust in the people around you that are telling you what it is like in the in the world of parasports.
Absolutely. And that's why I tried not to make it sound as if this was Ryan's fault, because I don't believe it is. I really don't. But it came across to me as if maybe his expectation had been that he would just walk right in. And that's, as you said, probably a result of people not knowing the parasport world in the way that they should. So, I mean, my first thought, hearing that he was trying out for parasports and para hockey in particular, was, oh yeah, that's great. He'd make a great player on that team. But the problem is, when you're newly injured and when you have played hockey one way your entire life, from what I've been led to believe, it does take time to adjust to the para hockey game. Not that the game is different, but just the way you play is different. And so you have to learn how to get that mobility and that stick handling and all those skills that you had back again. And if the disability is in the right area, those things could be affected. And so it's not just going to be a cakewalk. But having said that, I would really have loved him to have been able to make the team at some point. I just wonder if he moved on too quickly. Yeah,
I would agree. But he also, Claire, may have seen the writing on the wall, in that we all know and understand that the para hockey world is built around, particularly on the men's side, it's built around amputees. And so when it's built around that, when you have paralysis of the lower limbs, you're in trouble.
Absolutely. And I think with Ryan specifically, he has less core activation than I think your typical sledge hockey player as well, which makes it very difficult to play sledge hockey at a high level without being able to use your full core. But yeah, like you said, it's also geared towards people that are a lot smaller stature than him. He's a tall guy, and that's pretty rare. When you look at the Canadian national team, yes, there's some tall guys there, but those guys are also single amps at the same time. But yeah, this is the conversation I was kind of alluding to. Is it sucks, but sometimes your level of disability or the type of disability that you have does not align with being at a high performance level with a specific sport. And we had a conversation around classification last week. Sorry. So yeah, that all comes into play, and it shows his level of his disability as well when we look at how he is an athlete within wheelchair basketball. He is a lower class player, which just goes to show where his mobility is lacking, and that wouldn't transfer over to sledge hockey, in my opinion, at kind of the level that you're seeing in the Tyler McGregors and the Liam Hickeys. So I definitely think his disability plays a big part in it. And I can absolutely see that it seems like he could have taken a lot more time to feel out that situation and maybe even play both sports. We've seen athletes do that, and it benefits them in a lot of ways. So I'm intrigued that he didn't stick with it and play both at the same time.
This goes to Josh's point, and I want to emphasize this because we don't know parts of the behind the scenes conversation. And so in no way are any one of the three of us expressing that Ryan would have on his own come and said, I'm now a para athlete and I'm going to come in and I'm going to be part of the national program. But the challenge is because you're given information. Like I said earlier, you're going to trust in that information you're given. And when you have people who say, like Russ Harrington, who says, oh, he was being trained by another high-level hockey player whose name has escaped me at this moment, so we had to give it a try. And that's to Josh's point. But I think there is that moment of, if he felt led and sort of misled by the coaching staff in some of those private conversations that we would have no business being a part of, then yeah, I can sort of see why you'd say, well, that door's closed and I'm going to go open another one, John.
Yeah, that does make sense. I wonder who it might have been that was training him, but ultimately what it comes down to is there's a lot of good players already on that team and in that pipeline. And so if you are not ousting one of those people, unfortunately, you're just not going to make it through. And I do feel like this is not on Ryan. I do feel like this is people setting him up for something that was potentially not possible. So I do want to be clear about that. I'm not blaming Ryan for thinking he's going to walk in and make the team. That's not what I'm trying to get at. But I can appreciate the pressure he would be under because he is well known, and as he said in the interview, he had a lot of fans and a lot of sponsors behind him in order to even try this. So I get it, and I hope that he finds his sport.
Claire, you have played wheelchair basketball in this country and in Alabama. Do you think that wheelchair basketball fits him better? And I don't mean from a recreational point of view, because I think that's obvious when you look at the disability. Do you think that sport fits him for the potential of breaking a national team?
I think that the classification system within wheelchair basketball gives him a much better chance, for sure. Speaking on his sponsors and all the support that he gets, it's really rare in the parasport world. You find an athlete with that much backing behind them individually. So he definitely has an advantage in resources to train and kind of go all in on this LA 2028 goal of his. I believe that if he was going to pick a sport, wheelchair basketball, because of the classification system, is a good fit for him.
Yeah.
He would have to become a role player, like a class one. That's true. You're a true role player, and your job is really to pick, seal, and get those higher classes involved. So it's, I truly believe that if anyone works hard enough, they can make something happen and give them the best possibility to reach their goals. We saw it with the rower out of Saskatchewan having a goal of being in the 2028 Paralympic Games and cracking the squad and going to Paris. He just worked his butt off and got a spot in Paris. So it's not impossible, but we'll see. I'm also really interested to see if these comments about being led on and that conversation around Hockey Canada has an effect on how coaches in the future view him.
I'll be honest, and again, not knowing any of the behind the scenes conversation, I believe that was strategically put in the episode, because I believe that's what he felt. I believe he has reason to believe that he was led on, and I respect that. But the other thing, Josh, and you can comment on what I just said, but also in addition to this, it does take all of us some time to understand our disability. Certainly, whether we're born with it or we acquire it, it certainly takes time to understand the disability. And I'm not sure he was given the opportunity to understand his disability before people said, "Oh, you were a hockey player, high profile, boom goes the dynamite, insert here." And it does take time to understand, what is my disability? And it's not, "Oh, you have paralysis of the lower limbs." It's, okay, how do I work with that? And how do I do that before you can just say, "Oh, go play this sport," and just go ahead.
Right. I do think comments like "I was misled" will follow him, unfortunately, because again, he's a high profile person just by nature of what he has had to go through. Is that fair? Maybe not, but it is his reality. And so it's certainly a comment that will be good for ratings. And as you said, it very well could be true that the coaching staff did lead him on. If that's the case, that's unfortunate. But ultimately, to speak to your other point, whether you're born with a disability or whether you acquire it, but I would say especially if you acquire it, you absolutely have a learning period where you have to figure out, okay, as you found out, Brock, when you tried sledge hockey, you have to have a certain level of balance. And if you don't have that, you're going to have some difficulties. And if you don't have a way of balancing yourself, then perhaps you're not making that even provincial level of hockey. And just because someone was a phenomenal stand-up hockey player doesn't mean that they're going to be able to translate it to the para game once they acquire their disability. There's another player on that team who I've had the pleasure of playing with. I think, Claire, you probably have too. Dominic Cozzolino. He was an acquired injury, and he was fairly lucky, I believe, in that his disability was not as severe. And so he is able to stand and walk, and I believe his skills were more quickly able to translate to the game, where I'm not sure, having not seen Ryan play, that his skills from his previous life were able to transfer as quickly.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's exactly what I was alluding to, is it's people don't realize how important core function is in the game of sledge hockey. And I think really, truly, that's the deciding factor with Ryan. And it's just a fact. If you don't have it, it's really hard to play sledge hockey. So yeah, Dom got much better results from his recovery. His injury wasn't as severe. And yeah, he has full core function. And so whether you are a good hockey player or not, it's just, you need that muscle group to play sledge hockey, even at a rec level.
Yeah. I mean, I knew right away like I didn't even have an opportunity to move in the sled. Like I sat and then I fell and then I sat and then I fell and then I sat and I fell again. And it was very quickly to understand I don't have the core. And for the audience who may not know my body makeup, I am in a very specialized seat. Like, this is the only reason why I'm able to sit in a wheelchair, sit up straight, and do this. And if I knew then what I know now, and you're talking about then as like I was 8, 9, 10 years old. If I knew then what I know now, I would not have put myself through that, because I did have the aspirations of wanting to be on the para ice hockey team, and I'm not necessarily saying national team, but just I wanted to be a part of it. And then we thought, oh, let's try wheelchair basketball. Same problem, no core strength. Like, there's just things you have to know about your disability, in a certain way to understand. I'm not going to do this. I want relative quick thoughts on this next part from both of you, because I want to get to some other stuff as well. But in an episode following the first episode, Russ Harrington called Ryan back and said he'd like to have a meeting with Ryan. And the scene I'm thinking about is Ryan's driving in his car and kind of sort of wondering, what this meeting could be about. And he kind of alludes to the fact that, they'd mentioned that if I wanted to be part of the coaching staff in some capacity, that could be something they would look at. Anyway, fast forward to when he arrived to see him. It ended up that, yes, they wanted him on the coaching staff in some capacity. Claire, I'm just wondering, from your perspective, what do you make of that, given that they know that he wants to be a high-level athlete? Like, what do you make of them wanting to extend an offer for him to be on the coaching staff?
Last week, I said that if that head coaching job or any positions opened up for the coaching staff, that I would love to see a para-athlete being added to it. So it would be really interesting to see if he actually takes that position. And yes, I think in the coaching role, his hockey experience transfers over quite a bit. I would love to see him in that role. That's it. I don't see him being able to do both the coaching job and pursuing the 2028 Summer Games in wheelchair basketball.
And he obviously has a goal set that he wants to be part of the Paralympic Games in 2028, and that's a goal that I respect. I look and say, yep, no problem. You want to do that, go for it. And that's the path that he's taken. And you got to let him kind of have his journey and be what it will be, and it will be what it will be. But I just thought it kind of interesting that they came back and said, we want to have a conversation with you. It almost made me sort of think to myself, did you have that meeting with him because you knew circumstantially that maybe in the back of your mind you did lead him on, and then at the time you realized, well, there is another skill we could use him for because of the whole high profile, the understanding of hockey, all this? That, in my mind, was possibly part of it. Josh, your thoughts on just that whole getting an offer to be part of the coaching staff, and where Hockey Canada might have come from?
That, to me, feels like capitalizing on his notoriety. He may have a lot of hockey skill, and he may be able to translate that. But at the same time, we all know the expression, those who can do, those who can't teach. And so is he going to be able to take the knowledge that he's got about hockey and, number one, transfer it to the para game, And number two, teach it to athletes who need to hear it.
He also understood in that episode that he had that meeting with Russ, is that yes, he has the understanding of hockey, but he would have a lot to learn in the para game. And right now his goal was 2028 games. And you know, it's tough to do both at the same time. To sort of close this conversation, I want to reiterate this one more time. I believe that this series is a good series. I believe that every word that Ryan has said in this first two episodes, that is true. No one here is suggesting that he was going to make a team. I do think there is something to be said about his perception was that he was going to make the team and just didn't. So if you want to catch the next episodes, they are available on Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a 6-part series. If you missed the first parts, that's okay. You can go back to AMI.ca and AMI Plus to get the further episodes. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Communications and Marcom, Greg David, who put together this interview, the opportunity for me to sit down with Ryan. And I told Ryan at the end of the interview that I would like to follow his journey, and I will continue to do so with wheelchair basketball, and we all wish him nothing but the best in that regard moving forward. This next sort of bit of our conversation is one that I understand why we are where we are, but there's a few little pieces that I want to pull on regarding this, and that is the fact that Russia is continuing to be banned from the 2026 Olympic and Paralympic Games. Russia has not competed as a nation since the 2018 Pyeongchang Games. They have had athletes compete as Olympic athletes of Russia or Paralympic athletes of Russia, which would be signified on your screens as OAOR for the Olympics and PACR for the Paralympics. So here's my question, and it exhausts me, because here's my question. Do we have to get to a point where we don't blame the wars on the athletes and we just say, well, they can go back and they can compete as athletes from their nation? Or do we have to be where we are as long as the war is going on? Claire, start with you on that.
I believe my opinion has changed over the course of this situation. At the beginning of it, I definitely would have said, no, make a stance and stick to your word kind of thing. But yeah, I don't see a place where the athletes should be essentially penalized for anything political that's going on in their country. So it is a tough conversation because on one hand, you want to hold the people that are controlling the decisions around the war to kind of put your money where your mouth is and like give them consequences in a way. And I think that this has been a place where they've been able to send that message of we don't support this. But in the end, the athletes are being affected by it the most and not being able to really be appreciated for the time and effort that it does take to be an Olympic and Paralympic athlete.
Yeah, for me, I'm very troubled by the whole discussion because on the one hand, it seems silly to me that we have these athletes coming and saying, you know, Olympic athletes from wherever, from Russia, or we're saying like, what was the thing they used to call them years ago?
Well, you would see
they wouldn't use the word Russia, but you would know where they were from, essentially. And so it's like, if we're going to recognize that they're Olympic athletes, but they're from Russia, just let Russia compete. But on the other hand, if you're Ukraine, or if you're a nation that is being attacked by Russia, I wouldn't show up to a Olympics or a Paralympics that Russia was allowed to compete in if I was them. So you're caught in the middle as the Olympic Committee or the Paralympic Committee, because on the one hand, like the athletes probably don't support the war and should have the opportunity to compete. But on the other hand, you've probably got other nations that are going to boycott because they're there. It's like when we were all involved in the Cold War, and, you know, Moscow had the Olympics in 1980, and the Western world didn't go because we didn't support what Russia was doing. So do you either have half an Olympics because a bunch of nations boycott, or do you have an Olympics but Russia's not there?
I think we have to be where we are still, for a few reasons. And the first one is because these Olympic and Paralympic committees have set a precedence. And the reason they set a precedence was because of the wars that are going on and still going on, sadly. And because of that, it's hard to say, okay, well, it's been, 7 years since you guys have competed, and yes, the war is still going on, but we're just gonna put that over here, and we're gonna leave sports to be sports. The time for leaving sports to be sports is sadly gone. Like it's gone because of the precedent you've set. You have had to bring in geopolitics because of this situation. So I think these organizing committees are tied. And then they're tied even further because I agree with Josh, and I can't remember what they were identified either as before, but it had nothing to do with their name. Then that happened where you had that, and then Russia was like, well, but hold on, the athletes have nothing to do with it, so can we still put Russia in the name, but then we just won't play with the flag? So then we started, muddying the waters in that regard. So they are just really in a sticky situation, and that's where some people would look at this and say sports should be sports and politics should be politics. The problem is humans play sports and politics deals with humans, so it's going to intertwine anyway, Claire, and so it's really, really a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. When this whole thing started and they made the decision of like, nope, no athletes, and now it almost looks like they're trying to backtrack a little bit, but not do it in a way that makes them look like they're changing their minds. So it is a tricky situation because they're trying to get to this place of, okay, how do we almost do both? And I think you're right. You're in a spot where you really can't. You're either saying yes or you're saying no. And it's like, where do we go from here?
You're kind of saying sort of, Josh, is what you're kind of saying. This is by identifying them as Russia in any way, shape, or form. You're not saying yes. You're not saying no. You're not saying you were right or wrong. You're saying, we sort of are, and this is where we land. And unfortunately, this is where we are.
Exactly. On the one hand, I think anytime Olympic athletes have success, Russia is going to trumpet that to the world, regardless of what they're known as. And so if there's some way to not recognize them as being from Russia, then that's probably the ideal, but there's not. There's absolutely not. And so
they were referred to as just plain Olympic and Paralympic athletes, period. There was no identification before when this first happened. It was just Olympic and Paralympic athletes, which was kind of bizarre. And that's where I would sort of land. And I apologize to cut you off, but I found this information. That's where I would land. The problem is you land there and then they cry because, well, I'm still from Russia. Yeah, but we're mad with Russia because they're doing, and then you can't win in that situation, Josh. You can't.
No, you can't. And that's why I feel like I need to cry Switzerland here and be neutral, because on the one hand, the athletes deserve to be able to compete under their flag. But on the other hand, that flag brings up so many horrific things for many people. And so it's like, what do you do? There is no good answer here. And I fear that there's another nation that probably should be in the same boat right now, but they won't be. And that's a political conversation for offline, not online.
Yeah.
I think we all know which one I mean.
We could have this conversation for a long time. And I will tell you, Josh, it just clicked in my mind who I think you mean. And I get it, but it would never happen, I don't think, under the circumstance. But I could be wrong. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we'll discuss it after.
Fair enough. And we'll see where that conversation goes and whether I eventually bring it back. We'll see, but we'll save that for offline at the moment. Do you guys want to comment? I'm going to give you the choice. Do you guys want to comment on the NHL Stanley Cup final or the NBA final? Which of the two do you want to comment? I will just say your name and you can comment on whichever one you want to, or both. I don't care. We're not really on a time limit. So Josh, go ahead.
Okay, let's see. Stanley Cup final, I think, is exactly where we thought it would be. At the time of our recording, it is tied 1-1, and Game 3, I believe, is this evening. I believe that Edmonton can win this series, but their goaltender has to stop allowing really, really soft goals like the one that ended Game 2. As for the NBA final, go Canada. I don't care who wins.
Okay. Well, I got to think of different opinions now because I don't want to mirror Josh because, yes, I absolutely agree that, this is where I saw the NHL finals being. I have a different take on what needs to change. That breakaway from Marchand, I wholeheartedly believe, is on the defense that didn't check his shoulders and just Marchand snuck behind there. So, that's a huge mistake in my mind, as well as you can't let soft goals in like that. NBA Finals, I would love to see OKC win. But man, those Pacers, they are exciting to watch. I watched Game 1, and it's mind-blowing how that team keeps fighting and clawing their way back. And I love a story like that. That's the main reason why I watch March Madness. I love the underdogs. I love the Cinderella stories. And Halliburton keeps getting told that he's underrated and overrated, And I love when an athlete puts a teammate on his back and says, you know what, you can shut your mouth. I'm exactly where I deserve to be. But yeah, there's a handful of Canadians in the finals on both teams. So I hope everyone just has a good time, I guess. Go Canada.
Well, and I should be clear. I think that the reason I'm saying go Canada, I don't care who wins, is because there's Canadians on both sides. So that's why.
Yeah. I saw something of very interesting note. There are more Canadians on both sides of Florida and Edmonton than not, apparently. I saw this on a real video, which is quite impressive when you consider that. So there's Canadian content on every side of this, but we want Edmonton, or I would like Edmonton to win, and I think most of us on this panel would as well. He texted Josh's wife during Game 1 of the Stanley Cup final, and she and her mother were watching it, which I thought was amazing, and she enjoyed it. And then I said to her when Marchand scored, I said, that was the worst guy that could have scored on the Florida Panthers as far as I was concerned. And her response was very, very apropos. She said, "Oh, thanks for letting me know. Fascinating." And it was just that moment of, oh, maybe I care about this a little too much. Like she just wants to see Canada win the Stanley Cup. That's fine. It's all good. But when she said, "Thanks for letting me know that he was the worst guy that could have scored," she could have cared less. And obviously I didn't need to care as much. Josh, you care to comment on that?
All I will say is that my beautiful wife is not the biggest sports fan. And so I believe that she would want to see Edmonton win, and that is totally fine. I agree with her. I want Edmonton to win as well. But yeah, she's not going to know one player from another right now, and that's okay. She has a lot of other interests that are wonderful, and yeah, I'll bring her up to speed with sports as time allows.
Although, to be honest, because I permit you to share this story with her, because I know she doesn't have the ability to listen to the podcast, unfortunately. She did make me step back and realize, oh, maybe I care about this on a level that I really shouldn't, because I was angry, and she was just like, yeah, whatever, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, she probably appreciated the information, but she might not know why you feel that way. So yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
We'll sit down and talk about it over wings sometime.
Yeah. She just doesn't know the deep history that Canadians have with Brad Marchand. One, just continuously losing to whatever team he's on in the playoffs, but also just realizing at the end of the day he's also Canadian, so it's just that extra turn of the knife of this Canadian guy that we love to see on the national team alongside the other greats that we have, but man, we hate playing him in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The other person that's creeping into the Marchand territory is Sam Bennett. Like, Sam Bennett is creeping into that territory of someone needs to tell him that his elbows don't need to go into people's heads, and the only way you're going to tell him not to do that is probably suspend him. There's been a couple of plays this playoffs and obviously in other ones, as I saw in another video, that there's been other ones where he really needs to keep himself in check, and I think that it's about time that he probably gets suspended. But I digress. My little comment on the NBA final is that I think this series is going to be a very good one. I think Oklahoma City really got their eyes opened in game one. They were up 13, up 15, up 18. Then it was like they would claw back, and then they would bring it back to 12 and 13. OKC came out in game two and said, "You're not beating us, and I don't care what we have to do. This is over by the end of the third quarter." And I think that's what OKC ended up doing. We'll see what transpires in Indiana, but it will be very, very fascinating. That is the end of our program for this week. I just want to remind you that we will not be here next week, but we will return on the 24th of June. So until then, be safe, be well.